Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. So I've chatted about elopements and micro weddings before, and this is a topic I get asked about quite a bit and seems to have high interest among people that are planning a wedding. So if you're planning a wedding and you're trying to decide how you want to proceed, today's video we're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of having a elopement or micro wedding versus a big wedding from the perspective of a wedding planner. So an elopement or micro wedding is, as you would suspect, a smaller wedding than kind of your big traditional 100 plus guest wedding. So with an elopement, typically this is just the two of you and a witness or two. So elopement and micro wedding tend to get kind of combined these days because micro weddings have become a lot more popular in the last few years. However, traditionally an elopement is just you two and a couple of witnesses, typically somewhere adventurous or even just at a courthouse, where a micro wedding is slightly larger than that and you still do all of the somewhat traditional things that you do at a big wedding at just a much smaller guest count. So let's talk about this category first, and I'm going to combine an elopement and micro wedding into one category for the sake of this video. So let's talk some pros of having a smaller elopement or micro wedding. Number one is probably what everyone is thinking, and that is your budget. This is going to save you a lot of money. Rather than having a very large wedding, you're not going to have to pay for dinner for a bunch of guests. You're not going to have to pay for a very large venue. Basically anything that correlates with your wedding budget. This is a huge bonus when it comes to having an elopement or a micro wedding. And you can allocate these funds if you're like a college student or you're going to grad school and maybe you don't have a full-time job yet, so you don't have a large savings to be able to put towards a large wedding, or if you're in the process of buying a house, or maybe you want to go on an epic honeymoon. These are all very attractive reasons to have an elopement or a micro wedding. Next is they're much more intimate and personal. It's a lot easier to just focus on your relationship, your union, your connection with each other, and have intimate moments with each other when you are having a smaller wedding. This is also great if you are a shyer person or you guys don't like to have the spotlight on you or be the center of attention. An elopement or a micro wedding is a great option for that. Additionally, having a smaller wedding, whether it's an elopement or a micro wedding, can help eliminate any family drama that might arise. I know for some couples, this can present itself in a somewhat nasty way at large weddings. And if you're not wanting to deal with that at all, having an elopement is a great way to just eliminate that risk altogether. And lastly, elopements and micro weddings just allow you to place the emphasis and the focus on the reason behind why you're there. Not that you can't do that at a big wedding, of course, but there's just so many more societal pressures and this pressure to make it perfect and picture perfect, and all of the inspiration that's out there on the internet and having this like Pinterest perfect wedding can kind of go away, and also the pressure to be pleasing everyone in attendance as well. Now, there are of course some potential downsides when it comes to an elopement or a micro wedding. One is managing the potential disappointment of family members or friends that you are not inviting that will likely want to be at your day. Also feeling like you're missing out on something. That is something that I have heard couples express that they are concerned about, having a smaller wedding and then wishing that they had something larger after the fact. I've also had plenty of friends and previous couples that have had the big large wedding, and so that if they were to ever do it again, they would do like a micro wedding or small elopement. Third, having your day and wishing that there were certain people that were there to celebrate with you. So a lot of the disadvantages that come with a smaller wedding are kind of the what ifs, or feeling like you're missing out on something. But again, I feel like a lot of that just has to do with societal pressures or familial pressures, so that's not always the case for everybody. All right, let's talk big weddings now. So pros of having a big wedding, of course, it's just creating that kind of extravagant experience, the concept of like the biggest day of your life, and creating epic memories. Obviously, that's like a huge pro when it comes to having a large wedding. You also have tons of photos to look back on, and photos that kind of tell a story throughout your entire day, not just pictures of your wedding ceremony itself and like photos of you guys as a couple, if that's something that's important to you. You also have the involvement of all of your closest friends and family, and kind of this shared joy and community and excitement on your wedding day. I think the biggest pro is when else do you have a day to have every single person that is important to you and your partner all in one room, all in one place together to celebrate you. There's also the notion of fulfilling childhood dreams. If you're somebody that has dreamt of their wedding day, this is your opportunity to kind of live out that dream. And lastly, honoring any sort of family traditions or religious traditions or customs is much more feasible in a larger wedding, or you have more opportunity to do so than in a micro wedding or an elopement. Now, of course, there are cons, and there tend to be more cons for a big wedding than for small weddings, but don't let that sway your decision. This is totally a personal choice. However, obviously, much like for a micro wedding and elopement, one of the biggest pros is the cost. Now for a big wedding, one of the biggest cons is the cost. So of course, if you're having a big wedding, this is going to require a lot more money. You're paying for a larger venue, you're paying for a lot more guests to be fed and have drinks and the decor and all of that, just a lot more involved, a lot more money. This also requires a lot more planning, and it's also going to require a lot more planning in advance, whereas a micro wedding or a small wedding still has a little bit of planning, but you don't need that year lead time. You don't need to do things 10, 12, 13 months in advance. And like we discussed earlier, you do have that added pressure of pleasing everybody. This also comes through when creating your guest lists. Some couples experience a lot of difficulty in drafting the guest list and knowing who to invite while still keeping it somewhat intimate, and knowing kind of where to make the cuts and how to go about that, as well as like a bridal party, wedding party, asking your wedding party to be a part of it. There is this sense of needing to please everyone and sense of pressure to an extent. You are also opening more risk for if you have any sort of potentially difficult family dynamics. This is going to express itself a lot more in a large wedding. You also have the constant inspiration of Instagram and TikTok and Pinterest, of all of these beautiful weddings, and planning a wedding when you're constantly bombarded with a lot of this can be really difficult and add extra pressure on you. You also have the spotlight completely on you all day long when you have a big wedding, and a lot of eyes are going to be on you. It's also a whirlwind of a day. You often don't get a lot of opportunity to have special intimate moments with the guests at your wedding either. So there are, of course, pros and cons of having both a micro wedding or an elopement or a large traditional wedding, and this decision is going to be completely up to you. And as you're entering this planning process and navigating between the two and deciding on which one makes more sense to you, think about what truly matters to you and your partner, what makes sense for you guys as a couple, and consider all of the pros and cons for both categories. Discuss your priorities with each other and how they align with having either a smaller wedding or a larger wedding, as well as how much of the budget is going to be a deciding factor in your overall wedding plans. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we'll see you next week.